Happy Friday! It's a Friday edition of Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. We got a bunch to get to. It was a late night of football, a late night of NBA. It's been a wild 24 hours. We want to start by saying thank you to everybody that hung out with us all morning yesterday as we spent the entire morning updating everything that we possibly could as we were getting breaking news. And again, a shout out to our team to get such great coverage yesterday on the betting scandal. More on that to come on the course of today as we have more information. We continue to break it down. But Caroline, let's start the show as we start every show with 3 points. What is on your mind, my friend?
News updates.
Wild day in the NBA yesterday, and we highlighted all of that on our show yesterday. So shout out to the team. You can find all of that on the Yahoo Sports YouTube page. But there was also a wild day in the NBA, actually on the hardwood, actually in basketball games, because yet another double overtime thriller for the Oklahoma City Thunder as they take down the Indiana Pacers 141-135. And that would not have been possible without the efforts of one Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. SGA, a career-high 55 points. You know, I picked the Oklahoma City Thunder to go right back to the NBA Finals before the season started, and I thought, man, is that the right call? Is that the right pick? Can they really go back-to-back? Does this Thunder team have what it takes to go to their second straight finals in 2 years? And I know it's early. I know we're only a couple of games into the season, but based off of what we've seen so far, why not the Oklahoma City Thunder? Because as long as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is doing the things that he's doing and is doing what he did last night, again, 55 points for the reigning MVP. Why not OKC? So last night, SGA tied Russell Westbrook with the most 50-point games in Thunder history, with 5 games with at least 50 points. What a blast that finals rematch was, because everything that we hype finals rematches up to be, that one delivered, Fitzy.
Yeah, I loved watching Indiana in that game fight hard, especially a shorthanded team. SGA, more like SG. Yay! Am I right? Oh, God. I hate that I did that.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, America.
You're so right. Yeah.
SG, yeah. Okay, I'll move on to my first point. Yeah, there we go. I'm sorry, everybody. It's too early on a Friday for this level of chaos. I'll get to my first point. We'll stay in the association with another epic game. This one may just stay up late, but we got overtime. Again, late night basketball wants to make sure that none of us get to our bed at a reasonable hour. We get a big win for the Warriors over the Nuggets, 137-131 in overtime. You see Steph right there. 42 points in a big night full of big shots. Steph had what looked like the game-tying shot with about 4 seconds left. There was a shot for Jokic to try and win this thing at the end of regulation. Couldn't get it to fall. Aaron Gordon, by the way, had a career-high 50, including 7 for 7 in the first half from downtown. Absolutely wild night. 10 of 11 from long range. So absolutely wild night from him, but it just wasn't enough. In fact, Jokic also with the triple-double. You mentioned history earlier. I should mention Jokic with the triple-double becomes only the second player in NBA history to have 4 triple-doubles on opening nights across his career. So absolutely huge night. The stars start out. That's what this really came down to. The Warriors and the Nuggets showed us exactly what's going to make the West must-watch basketball night in and night out for the entire season, because there is no one thing that you can look at and say, well, if this guy had done that, then maybe the outcome would be different. No, this was just absolute career nights. This was absolute balling out in every possible way. Big win for the Warriors. The Nuggets start 0-1. They were the last team this season to get a tip-off, so they'll knock some of that rust off. I'm not panicked about my Denver pick for the NBA Finals yet, but yet again, we get extra basketball. NBA gods, please, God, just let us get to bed on time. That's all I'm asking. All right, let's move to our top point of the night, and it comes in the form of Thursday night football. We were all fixated on what we expected. What would it look like? A Chargers-Vikings matchup that showed so much to prove from both sides. And Caroline, I just kept watching this game thinking one thing. The Minnesota Vikings are broken. I don't care how you'd want to try and slice and dice this thing. They fall to 3-4, and they got their asses kicked by a Chargers team that was just able to handle them on both sides of the football, and the Vikings have no answer at the quarterback position. Like, this was a tough night for Minnesota.
Oh, it was brutal. And it felt like going into this game, it was a matchup of like, the hardest battles going to the strongest soldiers. Like both of these teams had just been so much, bitten by the injury bug, and that continued last night. But, it was a rough night for the Minnesota Vikings. I would, though, like first to give credit to the Los Angeles Chargers because they'd lost 3 of the last 4. We had been questioning to ourselves after the Chargers got off to such a fiery start to start the season. We had been questioning to ourselves, like, is this team broken? Is this Chargers team, really have what it takes to compete with the Chiefs in the division? Or is this just kind of, a middling average Chargers team? But Joe Alt comes back. He's healthy. Justin Herbert had a fantastic day, 18 to 25, 227 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did have the 1 pick. Overall, the Chargers ran the ball, I think, better than we've seen them run the ball all season long. Defensively, they were absolutely positively lights out. I mean, they held the Minnesota Vikings to less than 200 total yards, especially on the ground. And that was one of the vulnerabilities I felt like of this Chargers team was they struggled to run the ball and they also struggled to stop the run. Per Next Gen Stats, Minnesota had 0.0% rushing success rate. Like that's actually impressive to not have a single successful rushing play in the span of a 60-minute game. So they stopped the run well and they ran the ball well. And shout out to that man right now, Kamani Vidal, 23 carries, 117 yards and a touchdown. What felt like this Chargers run game was just kind of, dead as we knew it with how many injuries they'd suffered on the season. Of course, Najee Harris went down with the injury. We saw Kamani Vidal step up and really reignite a run game that I thought was really dead to rights. Now, is this Chargers team fixed? I don't know. You beat up on a bad team, which is what the Vikings are. The Vikings are a bad team. So I can't say that, yes, definitively the Chargers are fixed and need to see them have those kinds of performances and have that kind of dominant performance against better teams. But they did what they were supposed to do. They took care of business against a bad team, a team that they should have taken care of business against. And I think I at least have this refreshed perspective and refreshed hope for what this Chargers team can be as long as Justin Herbert is playing like he was playing last night.
And I think that's part of it. Like when you talk about are the Chargers fixed, part of the answer to me to that is, well, they're getting healthy. And so I don't know that they were ever broken. They were just a shell of themselves. So now they sit at 5-3 in an AFC where that certainly puts you right in the thick of controlling your own destiny in the playoffs. But more importantly, as they get healthy, I just can't get out of my head what they did to that defense last night. Let's not get it twisted. The Vikings lost this game because they gave up 37 points. Like the Vikings, we'll talk about the quarterback situation in a second, but the Vikings defense is well regarded. And the Vikings defensive coordinator is considered to be one of the best in the league. And we keep looking at it and saying, no, the Vikings will be fine. The concept this year has been the Vikings will be fine. They just got to get some things figured out. The Vikings will be fine while they wait for JJ to get back. The Vikings will be fine while they wait for JJ to develop. All these things that we say about the Vikings. Well, last night what we saw is the Chargers are still the Chargers, right? Like this is still a Harbaugh team. How does Harbaugh beat you? He beats you at the line of scrimmage. Now that he's got enough healthy bodies on each line of scrimmage to try to do that, he was capable of doing that. And once you have to sort of account for what they're doing to you at the line of scrimmage, once you have to account for the fact that they can run the football, now all of a sudden Justin Herbert has the chance to get great one-on-one matchups, which he took advantage of over and over and over again. Some of the meticulous passing by Justin Herbert, he was just on a different level last night. So we're looking at a Justin Herbert that comes into a Thursday night football game on fire with an offensive line, to your point, that's healthier, and they're able to keep him upright better with a running game that's clicking on all cylinders and a defense that's dominating. Like, this was always the recipe for how the Chargers intended to win football games. We just haven't gotten to see it much this year because everything's been so disjointed. Now, don't get it twisted. The Chargers still have injuries they're dealing with out there, and they did this. So for everyone that says, well, the Vikings are banged up, the Vikings have issues, so do the Chargers. The Chargers were so clearly last night a better football team than the Vikings. I think that part of it is a little bit stunning. Two teams that could have given you plenty excuses for a loss, and the Chargers came out and just whooped the snot out of them.
Yeah, and the Chargers got even more injured last night. Derwin James went out with an ankle injury. So it feels like once you finally get Joe Alt back, it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back with this Chargers team. But last night, I think, was such a statement. You mentioned Justin Herbert. Well, he targeted 5 different receivers last night. Quentin Johnson didn't even record a single catch. So you can look at that from either side of the coin and say, well, why wasn't Quentin Johnson involved in the game last night? We can talk about that all day long. I look at that and think, well, imagine how much more lethal and potent this passing game can be if and when Quentin Johnson gets involved, that the passing game was clicking on all cylinders so much so that Quentin Johnson didn't even need to get involved. So I almost look at that as like a net positive for this Chargers passing game and for Justin Herbert and the weapons that he has available to them. You bring up the Minnesota Vikings, though, and I think ever since JJ got hurt, or really going into the season knowing that JJ McCarthy was going to be the starter, knowing that he was going to get his first looks as an NFL starter, that the offense was going to be up and down, that it was going to sputter at times, that JJ was going to make some of those rookie mistakes. I know he's not a rookie, but in my mind, he's a rookie since he was out the entirety of last season. But what was going to carry this team, at least for the most part, was that Brian Flores defense, that aggressive and nasty Brian Flores defense. Well, that aggressive and nasty Brian Flores defense did not show up last night. They gave up 37 points to the Chargers and 420 yards. That's not this Vikings defense that we were kind of all sold. And then you compound that with the fact that the Vikings offense feels absolutely positively broken. And that's where the quarterback conversation comes into play. It was really hard to watch Carson Wentz last night. And he got so banged up. He was so obviously hurt. He looked just defeated every time he came out on the sidelines and every time he came to sit on the bench. It was really difficult to watch. And I think last night was probably proof to all of the conspiracy theorists out there that was saying that JJ McCarthy was getting soft benched, that, Kevin O'Connell thought they had a better chance to win with Carson Wentz, so they're just talking up this JJ McCarthy injury. No. I don't think anyone could have watched what Carson Wentz did last night and said that guy gives the Minnesota Vikings a better chance to win football games.
And the hardest part about it is there is absolutely zero tangible proof that JJ will fix anything. And this is what we do. Like with quarterback whisperer coaches, we turn in and we just presume that anybody can play quarterback. We did this in San Francisco where it's like, well, they don't need Brock. Anybody can step in. Well, not anybody, because there are certain lines in the sand where you realize you don't have a true starting quarterback. And the Minnesota sitting here with J.J. McCarthy was supposed to discover what the potential looked like, but he hasn't been on the field. He can't stay on the field. And look, the high ankle sprain, I think we need to have a little grace and understanding. And if you do a little bit of research on what Minnesota's plan was, it was clear they wanted him to have a full week of practice. He wasn't able to get that in London because of the field conditions. He's still having some issues with the foot. They're being careful in bringing him back in a measured way. Those are all smart things long term. But we still today, right now, don't even know long term if J.J. McCarthy's going to be any good. And if your answer is, well, Michigan, all right, he won a national championship at Michigan. I hear that. But there was nothing about that suddenly said, oh, this guy is absolutely can't miss. We see the ups and downs of every young quarterback, no matter what happens. So we haven't seen any of that in the pros because he can't stay on the field. So now if you're the Vikings, you've already picked up more losses this year than you had all of last season. All the Vikings fans in the world sat there and said, we don't need to worry about the quarterback position. We're going to be fine. You just watched what happens when you are flippant with understanding what the quarterback situation looked like. To me, it was always irresponsible to go in and say, we're going to put it all on JJ this year, because who knows with JJ? So the fact that they're stuck with Carson Wentz is part of the institutional problem of how they've attacked the quarterback position all the way back in April. They put themselves in a situation where they got JJ and nothing. And last night, nothing lost you a football game. And you just got to sit here and say, my God, even if everything goes normal, not great, everything goes normal for JJ, there's going to be ups and downs. He's going to win them some games. He's going to lose some games. And they're going to spend the rest of this season figuring out if they have the quarterback. Well, you know what that means, Caroline? That means they're probably, if that's the solution, going to miss the playoffs. So you went from 14 wins to not even making the playoffs because you want to figure out what you have at the quarterback position. That is so irresponsible to the window to win a Super Bowl. It drives me crazy. It's why I haven't liked the Vikings approach, as you know, for the quarterback position for this entire process, and I don't feel better about it today.
Yeah, enough with the he won a national championship in college thing, so he must be good. You know who else won a national championship in college? Tua. And Miami can't get away from Tua fast enough. You know who else won a national championship? Mac Jones. You know who else won a national championship? Deshaun Watson. Two of those three are backups. So let's not act like success in college automatically equals success in the NFL. And I do understand the process, the slow burn that they're trying to bring JJ McCarthy along with, but we're in year 2. And we've seen what? Through 2 years of JJ McCarthy's NFL career, 7 quarters of football. Injuries are incredibly unfortunate. You can't control them. It's just a really sucky part of this game that injuries sometimes get in the way of the success of certain players, the development of certain players. But I think it's fair to wonder, and I think it's fair to question what JJ McCarthy's future in the NFL is going to be if he can't get on the football field. I don't care if your coach is an offensive genius or not. If you can't get on the football field, you're not going to be able to progress, to develop, and to get better. And I do have to wonder, Fitz, I look at Sam Darnold in Seattle. Seattle's now 5-2. And we've had some serious conversations about Seattle being, not just a playoff contender, but is Seattle a Super Bowl contender? And we talked with Frank not too long ago, and Frank said, yeah, the Seahawks could be in contention for the number 1 team in the NFL. I know that KOC has more knowledge of quarterbacking in his pinky than I will ever have in my whole entire body. But do you not think that maybe KOC's waking up this morning saying, I made a mistake. I made a mistake moving on from Sam Darnold.
I feel like Vikings fans right now will scream, you know what? It doesn't matter because all he would do is choke in the playoffs. To which I will remind you, Vikings fans, on the trajectory you're on right now, you're not going to get to the playoffs. So what's it matter? You know what's worse than throwing picks in a playoff game? Not even getting to the playoffs.
Yeah.
Right now, this Vikings team doesn't look like a playoff team at all. So have fun watching your former quarterback throw whatever games he throws in the playoffs, however he plays in the playoffs, because right now it looks like the closest the Vikings are getting to the playoffs is if they play it in a video game. We'll keep getting you updated on a big weekend of NFL to come, but we've got the latest information on the NBA's betting scandal, how it all ties together, and what that man has to do with all of the indictments we saw yesterday. We'll tell you about it next. Welcome back to Yahoo Sports Daily. Ben Fawkes tweets out an FBI indictment. Damon Jones text to co-conspire before February 9th, 2023 Lakers-Bucks game. Quote, get a big bet on Milwaukee tonight before the information is out. Player 3 is out tonight. Bet enough so D. Jones can eat too like now. ESPN has confirmed that player 3 was LeBron. And this is part of the web of this entire indictment when it comes to two forms of this. Remember, we saw two separate indictments, one involving a Mafia-backed poker game and one involving information around player props and betting that 6 players, Damon Jones being one of, was involved with. Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz, Yahoo Sports Daily. And Caroline, I have to remind everybody, this does not mean LeBron was a part of anything. This doesn't mean LeBron had any knowledge of anything. LeBron has not been accused of any wrongdoing in the indictment. It doesn't seem to have any connection of any awareness of anything that was happening. But the fact is, a part of that indictment was related to trading of insider information. If you know player X is going to be out and you tell somebody in advance so they can make money on bets, that is a violation of not only the NBA rules, but it's against the law, Caroline. So this is why a name maybe that wasn't as important to some people initially, Damon Jones, becomes one of the most important names, because even being LeBron adjacent in these conversations becomes a far more reaching conversation.
Yeah, 100%. And I think yesterday when we were listening to the FBI press conference and just kind of deciphering all of the information that we were getting at the time, the information that we had available, it was our understanding that these were two separate cases that were related, that it was, the Chauncey Billups of it all. And then there was the Terry Rozier side of it all, the Chauncey Billups Mafia-backed illegal poker games, and then the Terry Rozier, throwing games. What was the tie between the two? Because that's what they said over and over again in the FBI press conference, is that these two situations were separate but related. So I thought, okay, was the relationship between these two discussions the fact that it is NBA personnel, an NBA player and an NBA coach, and these two things are coming out at the same time, and that they're not related, but they are related just because they're both associated with the association? Damon James could be that tie that brings together this illegal poker game with Chauncey Billups and the alleged game throwing. That Damon Jones is the connector between league information, throwing games, fixing games, rigging games, and also making sure that the bad people that are involved in these illegal poker games are getting their money and getting their due. Now, of course, that's all speculation, but that feels like an obvious tie that brings these two cases together, because I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to see that relationship, to see how these kind of things connect, that there are bad people involved that are going to get their money no matter what, and somebody that has inside and valuable information to help them get that money.
The hard part right now is trying to decipher through what the internet does, right? Like the facts versus the conspiracy theories versus what people want to believe is real. Like, I think it's important to stress, Brian Windhorst on ESPN has mentioned several times, the NBA has made it clear. He's talked to league offices about, why did the FBI find this and the league didn't? And the league's answer seemed very honest and transparent to Wendy when he describes talking to them about the fact that they don't have the power to wiretap. They don't have the power to turn around and subpoena people. They don't have the power to get people to roll over on people. It's a much more accurate and let's say legal way to describe what we talked about yesterday, that, a boss can come in and ask you if you filled out your time card correctly, and you can lie to your boss. But if the FBI comes in and asks you the same question, a little harder to get away with that, right? So what we've learned is that the NBA is wildly hamstrung in their ability to even investigate this. And I don't think there's an easy answer. I keep hearing people say, well, get rid of prop bets and don't allow people to bet on individual player props. And Caroline, I want to remind everybody that we got to where we are because rules that are in place are being broken. So if you take away prop bets, are you really taking away somebody's ability to go out and do that? No. Like, again, the regulation of it is part of how it was caught. The irregularities in betting for Terry Rozier were caught by the NBA that day. Not weeks later, that day. Now, they investigated it, and they couldn't do a damn thing about it. They couldn't prove any of it. But the sports books found the evidence of irregularities that day. That, again, as we've said yesterday, tells me that the system's working. What's not working is the availability of information to investigate and the ability for the NBA to thoroughly punish. Now, the FBI, they're not hamstrung by any of that. And the FBI has no reason to soften anything with the NBA. They're obviously not working with the NBA. If the FBI was working with the NBA in this process to try and lessen any of the blow, the NBA would have been at the podium too. They could have come together and they could have kumbaya'd it and said, hey, we found these things. No, the FBI came out and made their very, very simple statement of we are looking at this. So now the NBA has to figure out how to react. I don't think that there's anything that can be done about it. And I know that that's whatever cynical view, but eliminating player props is simply eliminating people's ability to bet on something that players already can't bet on, and they were betting on it anyway. So I don't understand why we think that taking that away will suddenly take away people's ability to bet that wherever they choose to bet it.
Yeah, and important to just state for the record, the FBI owes the NBA nothing. Like, the FBI doesn't need to protect the NBA. The FBI doesn't owe the NBA any information that they don't want to give out. Like, this is the two entirely different and separate entities. Player props, I don't think getting rid of them completely solves the issue, but individual players are almost totally and completely in control of their player props. If a player's over/under point total is 21.5, a player can look up and say, okay, I have 19 points. Let me just airball these next couple of shots. Let me just not take these next couple of shots. Like, you can actually control an individual player's, like, if you are a player that's, let's say, put money on yourself on your under rebounds, you can just miss rebounds. You are actually tangibly in control of your own statistics, whereas an individual player isn't necessarily solely responsible for the outcome of a game. You can control what you do, and that, of course, contributes in part to the outcome of a game. But if the rest of your team around you has zero financial investment into, the outcome of the game, well, then your team can win a game, and you can try your very best to not contribute to that, but you're not in total control of that. So I do think player props are part of the issue, but then again, a big part of this individual instance is the sharing of sensitive and classified information. That you can get rid of player props all you want, but let's look at that example that Ben Fawkes tweeted. That Damon Jones tweeted that LeBron was going to be out. That has nothing to do with just player props alone. That has everything to do with the potential outcome of a game. So player props, I think getting rid of them would eliminate part of the issue, but I don't think that it takes care of the issue in its entirety.
I don't think you can eliminate player props in offshore accounts, though. And the minute you take away our ability to, this is no different than the legalization of drugs conversation in some ways. If you take it away and you just force people to go overseas, we just lose our ability to track it as a society. It becomes tougher for us to see what's happening. Let me ask you this: bigger controversy, in your opinion, what we've seen in the NBA for this entire scandal. We'll put both of them together: the Mafia-based poker game and the fixing of that, and the fixing of these sort of player props and insider information, or the Astros in the World Series.
Oh, that's a fascinating question. Astros in the World Series, there's a championship on the line. So I always say anytime that there's a direct championship on the line, that's going to be a pretty freaking big deal. But to my knowledge, nobody in Houston got arrested for banging on trash cans and for using buzzers. From my knowledge, that's nobody's going to prison for that. I think the NBA situation is worse just because of how deep it goes. One, it's illegal. Two, from the FBI press conference, we learned that this goes back to 2022, that this spanned 11 different states, that we can look back at that World Series and look at it with an asterisk, right? And I do, to be honest with you. Sorry, Houston fans. I know they always get their panties in a wad whenever I say that, but we do. We look at that differently. Don't cheat. And then we won't give your World Series an asterisk. It's really, truly that simple. I think we might look back on the last several years of the NBA with a bit of an asterisk. That this puts a stain, not just in the last several years in the NBA, but this puts a stain on the NBA moving forward, period. That this now, this breeds a sense of distrust in the NBA, unmatched, I think, by any other league in sports. I think just because of how widespread it is, how deep it went, and how icky it now feels for so many, it has made the last several years in the NBA feel so icky. I think I have to say that the NBA is worse. Call it recency bias.
It's funny because if you'd asked me 2 minutes ago, I would have told you a championship is far worse than any of this, so it's definitely the Astros. But you changed my mind, even in what you just said, because the one thing that I get stuck in my head, we will never feel the same about the Astros, those Astros teams. And some people will never feel the same about the Astros organizationally because of the cheating and what it did to Major League Baseball. What happened over the course of the last 24 hours reinforces what people already thought, right or wrong, about so much of the NBA. And it's not about trusting one team, one player, one franchise. It's about trust for the entire sport. It's about trust for the entire league. And every time you see somebody clunk a shot they don't need to, or a weird bad beat at the end of a game, the first thought, just like every time a ref does something wrong in an NBA game, we all say, Tim Donaghy. Like, that's the first thing we say. Like, from now on, the minute there is anything suspicious in an NBA game, it can no longer just be a human moment. It has to be that something is fixed. That level of distrust, you're right. It's not just about the criminal charges that have come with it. It's about the distrust that it creates for generations of NBA fans moving forward. That's the problem. We'll keep breaking down information. As we get more of it, you'll get more of it. Obviously, this is an ever-evolving case. And check out all of our coverage from yesterday out on YouTube. If you watch Yahoo Sports Daily there, you can see it. A bunch of videos have been clipped. It's a great way to get caught up in exactly the ramifications of all of it. We're proud of the content we did yesterday. Hope you'll check it out. In the meantime, coming up next, we'll get into a little bit of college football. We're making this season wildly complicated. Maybe we shouldn't. Maybe it's very clear how this whole thing's going to end. Welcome back to Yahoo Sports Daily. RJ Young tweets out, Ohio State has allowed just 41 points all season. They've played 7 games. They are far and away the best team in the country. I just think Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz, maybe we are sitting here, Caroline, spending all of this time talking about the wild parody of college football. Unprecedented year. Oh, my God. Look at how crazy this all is. It's not going to feel crazy when we're sitting here at the end of the year and we end up with Ohio State winning the national championship and winning it easily. Like, I think maybe we're sleeping on the fact that there is clearly a team that is not part of the parity conversation. There's clearly a best team in the country, and it is clearly Ohio State.
Yeah, Ohio State is so good. Ohio State, I have to give that entire coaching staff so much credit because Ohio State lost 8 starters defensively from that national championship team last year. And the defense might be better this year. Like, you lose your 2 leading rushers, plus your quarterback, plus Emeka Egbuka, who I thought was one of the best, if not the best receivers in the country last year. And you're still the number 1 team in the country. Like, that kind of reload, not just replace, not just, rebuild, but reloading is I thought was very few and far between in today's college football. I really didn't think it was possible to reload that quickly in college football, just because you're not going to be able to stockpile players on your bench the way that you used to. And trying to supplement through the transfer portal can kind of be a shot in the dark. That yes, it's really easy to go out in the offseason and say, hey, you want to come play for the reigning national champions? Like, yes, I do. But it's not always easy to bring in a bunch of different players from a bunch of different backgrounds, from a bunch of different systems and a bunch of different schemes, and bring them together for all things to click almost immediately. And that's exactly what Ohio State has done. With as much turnover as they had, as much attrition as they had, whether it was on the roster or losing both of your coordinators last year, Ohio State has just been able to bounce back so quickly and so seamlessly. And we don't talk about them a lot, frankly, Fitz, because I don't think they're all that interesting. And like, Ohio State fans are going to be so mad at me for that. The most interesting game that they've played all year was that week 1 matchup against Texas. Texas was the number 1 team in the country at that point. You have the big bad Texas Longhorns and Arch Manning making his, true starting debut. I know that he had started some games the previous year, but his debut as the starter, the guy for Texas. And that win over Texas, a very narrow win over Texas, 14-7 win, doesn't seem nearly as good now as it did then, because Texas is not a very good football team. And look, they beat Illinois, a top 25 team in the country, and Illinois is not a bad team. Like, beating Illinois is nothing to scoff at. But beating Grambling and Ohio and Washington and Minnesota and a pretty crappy Wisconsin team, like, those games just aren't all that interesting. It's not really all that interesting to talk about a team that is just dominating all of the average at best teams on their schedule. So yes, Ohio State deserves so much credit for what they've been able to do. Yes, Ohio State looks like the best team in the country. Yes, Ohio State to win a national championship feels like a pretty safe bet, but also they're just not all that interesting. In a world of parity, in a world where Vanderbilt and Georgia Tech and Indiana matter, Ohio State's just not all that interesting.
Well, I think part of this, look, this is where fans are going to come at the helmet behind you, the LSU helmet. So let me just be let me be a tag team partner. But let me be a tag team partner here for a second. I'll tag in, and I'll just say this. I don't have, as you well know, we've covered college football together for a minute. I don't have any allegiance. I don't care who wins or loses. I don't care. I love chaos. I want chaos for the sport because I think it's great, and it's my favorite sport to cover because I really don't care who wins or loses. That being said, and I have been at times, even by you, accused of being a Big Ten apologist, because I'm usually the guy that's coming in and I'm like, how about Michigan State? Like, I'm just trying to find some reason.
It's always Michigan State.
I feel bad for Michigan State now. Last year it was high on Michigan State. This year I'm just embarrassed by it. Okay, look, but the fact of the matter is, if you just polled average college football fans that are living in the middle of nowhere, that watch the sport on Saturday and don't have a rooting interest, the fact is, at this point, the middle class of the Big Ten has become wildly boring. Like, it just, nobody cares. I'm sorry. Nobody cares about Nebraska. Nobody cares about Wisconsin. Nobody cares about Michigan State. People barely care about Michigan right now. Like, if you get outside of these markets, like, it just isn't wildly interesting football. Part of it, I think, honestly, is the fact that so many of the games take place during the day. Part of it is, honestly, that so many of these teams, just like Illinois, people aren't staying up all day saying, I can't wait to watch Illinois tonight. Like, I'm just being honest with y'all. So part of the reason I think we gloss over Ohio State is that it just, whether it's the salesmanship of the story, whether it's the way the rivalries feel on the broadcast, whether it's just the overall vibe, I don't know. But what I do know is palpable is that the Big Ten doesn't feel, the majority of the Big Ten doesn't feel like it hits the same way. I believe that Ohio State, Indiana, and Oregon are clearly 3 of the best teams in the country. And I would be comfortable putting an uncomfortable bet on any of those 3 to win playoff games. I think there's really good football in the Big Ten. I just don't think the conference as a whole is interesting enough to make random person in Montana that just flips through the channels on Saturday give a damn about what Ohio State's doing. They won't care until the playoffs when they watch a dominant football team.
And there are so many fun stories in the Big Ten, like what UCLA is doing, how they've been able to completely turn their season around since moving on from Deshaun Foster. Like, I have fallen in love with the story of UCLA and the top 3 teams in the Big Ten that we just saw, Ohio State, Indiana, and Oregon. I think those stories are fascinating. Like, you better believe I was glued to the TV when Indiana went on the road at Oregon, when Oregon went on the road at Penn State. The Penn State of it all. Who's replacing James Franklin? Who out there on the market feels like, it would be a home run hire for Penn State? All of those storylines I think are fascinating in the Big Ten. But there is something to dominant teams dominating every other team that just it to a certain point stops getting interesting. Like, I think about Alabama fans. For so long when Nick Saban was there, Bama fans would leave at halftime because they were up 55-0 on South Harmon Institute of Technology. It wasn't fun to watch your team just beat up on everybody every single week. Unfortunately, you bring up the helmet behind me. Unfortunately, every game my team plays is interesting, and I hate that.
Tigers.
Thank you. I would love boring football. I would love it if my team just beat everybody 55-0 every single week. But unfortunately, my team has to be interesting. So me saying that Ohio State is boring is not a knock on Ohio State. That's just simply great teams dominating everybody else, and to a certain extent with how much chaos that we have in college football. On any given week, Stanford can beat Florida State, and Florida State can beat Alabama, and Vanderbilt can beat LSU, and LSU might beat Texas A&M, a top 5 team in the country this weekend. Like, Washington State was playing Ole Miss close at Vaught Hemingway just a couple of weeks ago. When we have so many inexplicable and wild and crazy results in college football, sometimes the results that we see coming just aren't overly interesting. And that's okay, because if you are the ones laughing at the end of the season with a national championship trophy, then you're the one that gets to laugh at everybody else.
Greatness in some levels is boring. Our producer Doug has said we have a graphic. I want to get it up. That Ohio State showing the numbers on who's watching Ohio State. And it shows it here, the 10 most watched college football teams this season. And literally, look at these numbers. Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, Texas, Oklahoma, LSU. You got to get all the way down to 7th to see Ohio State. And I just think that speaks. And look, it doesn't mean that there's some catastrophic problem. Like, I think all of this parity conversation this year has been really fun. And when we end up with Ohio State versus Alabama for the national championship game, there's going to be a whole group of people that just whine and complain about that. Not me, not this guy. Like, I love it. And whatever it takes to get us to a great playoff, I want. And I do believe, to be very clear before all the haters come into the Menchies, I believe Ohio State is clearly the best team in the country right now. Like, I don't even think it's close. Ohio State, if I had an AP vote, would be number 1, and I would just laugh all the way while I waited to figure out who number 2 is. So, like, I think Ohio State deserves all the credit they're getting. It's also fair to say at the same time that greatness, because of everything you've mentioned, is just underappreciated. Now, if they win a championship this year, I know, that's a long way away. But Carolina, if they win the championship this year, then they cement themselves as one of the best teams in history. And we still won't. You win back-to-back championships, you have dynasty, and we still won't have paid attention to it. But that doesn't matter, to your point, as long as they get to that trophy at the end of the year.
And to our point about the Big Ten, about how the Big Ten just isn't overly interesting. And I think everybody gets, all upset about the SEC bias, so on and so forth. 7 of those 10 of the top 10 most watched teams in the country come out of the Southeastern Conference. 1 of those teams comes out of the Big Ten. So don't be mad at me for saying it's not an interesting conference to watch. I'm not just saying that, but tens of millions of Americans who watch college football week in and week out are telling you that it's just not the most interesting product out there, that it takes 6 other teams above Ohio State, and none of them are ranked above Ohio State in the AP poll to get to Ohio State.
Caroline, it's also, look at that list. We've seen these teams play each other, to your point. We've seen Alabama and Georgia. We've seen Tennessee and Georgia. We've seen Texas and Oklahoma. We've seen LSU take – right? Like, you go up and down the list, we've seen those teams play each other. Like, if you want Ohio State to rise in the number, what we need to see right there, like, we got to see a great hero and a great villain. That's what we love. We got to see both. Yeah. Like, you can't just have one or the other. You can't just put Hulk Hogan out against nobody. Nobody watches it. Hulk Hogan against Macho Man. Everybody watches it. Very dated 80s reference. But still, you get what I'm saying. We need quality on both sides. Ooh, yeah.
And there are so many games that looked interesting at the beginning of the season that just don't look interesting anymore. Like Ohio State, Penn State, I thought was going to be whoever wins that game punches their ticket to the Big Ten title game. That game feels wildly different today. But all of a sudden, Ohio State, UCLA on whatever day that is. Is that week 10, week 11, whenever week it is. Now that game sounds really fun and really exciting. So whenever you play, and look, Ohio State gets credit for scheduling Texas at the beginning of the season. It's not Ohio State's fault that Texas has turned out to be, falling drastically short of expectation. But when you have at this point one ranked team left on your schedule, and that is number 25 Michigan, like that's just what happens. Your scheduling is a big part of the exposure that you're going to get as a team.
We'll keep breaking it down all year long. It'll still be a fun season. In fact, coming up next, what you gonna do when the Monday headlines come for you? We'll figure out exactly what Monday's gonna look like by previewing this weekend. I should have known what we had in store with Wemby when they dropped the nugget about him learning to speak English with no heavy accent, because he knew he'd be doing a lot of interviews in the future. This dude's been plotting to be the face of sports for years. That from Nate Jones, NBA agent. After watching Wemby's debut, I feel that all the way to my core. Feel that. That's a man that's just thinking he's playing chess while the rest of us are playing checkers. So with that in mind, and knowing that we've got so much coming over the weekend, Wemby's good at predicting the future. Let's try and predict our own future here. It's time for some Monday headlines. Extra, read all about it. We'll give you a headline for the weekend that we think will be resonating by Monday morning. Caroline, I'll give you my first one. You ready for this one? Headline here coming for Dodgers halfway to a sweep. That is my headline. Dodgers halfway to sweep on the Monday headlines, Yahoo Sports Daily. That means 2 games, 2 wins, Toronto Blues. Boo-hoo. What do you think?
I don't buy it. I don't buy into it for a couple of reasons. One, that means that they're going to have to take 2 on the road in Toronto. And what we saw from Toronto in the ALCS is that Toronto looks like a different team when they're at home. So that's tough to do, especially, long travel. Yes, the Dodgers are coming off of a lot of rest, but I think that we can have the rest versus rust debate all day long, because we've seen several teams in the past, whenever there is an ALCS and an NLCS, that go wildly different. When there is one side of the coin sweeps and the other side of the coin goes to 7, historically, we have seen the team that went to 7 games come out to a hotter start in the World Series. That every team that has has gone to 7, that's facing a team that has swept, has won the World Series. So that's not to say that history is just going to continue that pattern, but that is to say that it's not just a foregone conclusion that the team that has more rest versus the team that has more rust is going to come out and have a hotter start or is going to come out and dominate that series. The other reason is too, this Blue Jays team is so tricky and they are so patient and they work pitchers that any given batter can work a pitcher into double-digit pitches. What is the one weakness that we have seen from this Dodgers team? It's their pitching depth and it's their bullpen. Now, that didn't come to fruition. There's no better way to, hide a weakness than to not even have to get to it, because the Dodgers starting pitching in the NLCS was so good and so dominant, whether it was, Blake Snell or any of the other pitchers on their roster, they were able to go 7, 8, if not even a complete game, 7, 8 innings or a complete game. I think the Blue Jays, at least for a couple of games, are going to be able to work that. The Blue Jays are going to force the Dodgers to have to, throw more arms out there. So I don't think that the Dodgers are going to sweep. I think that the series might go closer to 6 or 7 than it is 4 or 5.
I'm taking the long rest helps the starting pitching stay in longer, even though they're worked harder. And
that is true.
Hey, gets the monkey off his back in that last playoff game that was so historic, comes in just wildly firing in the World Series. Dodgers about to dominate this thing. Dodgers in 5 overall, but halfway to the sweep at the end of the weekend is my prediction. Give me your Monday morning headline that I can get into.
My Monday morning headline is the Jets jettison Aaron Glenn after the Jets remain winless after losing at the crappy Cincinnati Bengals on Sunday. This team is terrible, Fitzy. And they've already gone through one scapegoat. That scapegoat is named Justin Fields. And I know that the Jets owner, Woody Johnson, has already said, no, we are pledging our allegiance to Aaron Glenn. But this team is so bad. And if they lose and get worked by the Bengals, it's only going to make it worse. They've gone through one scapegoat. They're on to another. Aaron Glenn gets fired on Monday morning. What do you think?
Look, that's a fiery headline. And I kind of love the concept of never want anyone to lose their job. I think what we need to do, maybe I'll take the rest of the show off and I'll just sim it on Madden and just figure out what happens on Madden if the Jets lose this game by 40, because that's your path. And you're right. Like Woody's kids are out here, grandkids are out here playing Madden. They're like, Madden says fire Aaron Glenn. I don't think you're that far off though. I don't think it'll happen. But I do think that the Bengals are going to roll in this matchup. They're already favored by 6.5. I like the Bengals by double digits in this game. So if they go out and absolutely just destroy the Jets, by the way, not for nothing, that will put Cincinnati at 4-4 and right in the thick of things, even without Joe Burrow. So yeah, I kind of love the chaos. I like that. All right, I'll get you my next headline. We'll stay in the NFL for my next one. This one. I really like this headline personally. Looking at the Eagles-Giants matchup, my headline is "Scattaboo-hoo, sad Giants lose again." Everybody's telling me, the Giants just beat them a couple weeks ago. Okay, yeah, that's cool. Like a broken clock is right twice a day too. So, I'm not going to sit here and say that's this is proof positive that the Giants can take down the Eagles, or it was just a weird Sunday. It's okay for it to be a weird Sunday. The better team is still the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Philadelphia Eagles are going to go in angry after just losing, and they're going to make Scattaboo-hoo.
Scattaboo-hoo. I 100% agree with you. I love this. I will be eating this up on Monday morning when this comes across our newspapers, because that's what we do. We read newspapers. Because the Giants-Eagles game on Thursday Night Football, a couple of weeks ago, I think the Eagles were absolutely embarrassed. Not only losing by double digits, but also all of the subsequent memes and the viral social media moments, Jackson Dart high-fiving the referee, Cam Scattaboo ripping his shirt off on the Amazon broadcast after the game, how those two, Jackson Dart and Cam Scattaboo, just became America's sweethearts overnight. So it wasn't just the Eagles getting destroyed on national television by double digits, it was also how America, I think, kind of fell in love with this team after that game. The Eagles are going to be fired up. The Eagles are going to be pissed off. The Eagles overall are the better team. I will be fascinated to see how Brian Daboll gets his team up after such a devastating loss last week. They were up 19-0 on the Denver Broncos, got blanked in the fourth quarter, gave up 33 in the fourth quarter, and lost to the Broncos last week. That is an emotional loss. I'll be intrigued to see how Brian Daboll gets his team back up, but I agree with you. I think the Eagles take this one. As fun as this Giants team is, as fun as Jackson Dart and Cam Skattebo are, I think the Eagles win this one. They don't get swept by the Giants.
And I'm just going to flat out admit, at this point, I'm wildly jealous that Jackson Dart isn't my favorite team's quarterback. All right, give me your next Monday morning headline.
Okay, just picture this. Picture this, okay? The San Antonio Spurs play the Nets this weekend. Victor Wembanyama delivers a 50-piece. What do we think? The Brooklyn Nets kind of stink. No. They just gave up 136 to the Hornets.
We just saw 50 points. We're giving out 50 burgers at this point, like Oprah gives out cars, right? Like it's you get 50, you get 50. Wemby's got to, right? And also, I just can't, like, Caroline, I've watched a lot of NBA basketball for the last few days. I think all of us have, right? Like I've been double TVing the amount of NBA that I could possibly absorb into my veins. For all of the great performances that we've seen so far in the first couple of nights of the season, I still haven't seen anything that even just jars me as much as what we saw from Wemby in opening night, right? Like just the explosiveness, just the speed and the athleticism at 7'7", everything. Look at that, where he just stands over and just he dwarfs professional NBA players. Like it is just, it's different. And you're right, it's different. And I don't know how anyone's going to stop him. I really, truly don't know what the method is. Most locker rooms will turn around and figure out to slow him down. And I remember talking to Danny Green, who worked with us for a little bit with Yahoo. We were working on some basketball action. He was talking about one Spurs game where they spent all week in practice getting ready for the game. And they came to the bench, and he looked at Pop, and Pop was like, what's going on? We spent all week working on this. And Danny just looked at him and was like, yeah, they're just better than we are. Like there is some level of, like, we can work on the game plan all day long, but that doesn't mean that they're still not better than we are. I think that's going to be the Wemby effect all year long. Like, you can watch it on tape. You can come up with a game plan for it on tape. You can try and figure it out. But unless Wemby's just having a day where his fingers are a little cold or his hands are a little tight, like, I just don't see how you slow him down. I love 50 from Wemby. Yeah. Plus he's going to need that. If he, like, he's our MVP pick on this show. Like, we're Team Wemby on this at this point. We need this from him.
I mean, he might have back-to-back 50 burgers because the Spurs go to New Orleans tonight and then the Nets on Sunday. Like, those are two bad teams. Like, I think Wemby has the opportunity to drop 50+ in back-to-back games because, like, against Dallas, like, it was like watching what I think a professional basketball player would do against a little league team, against like an 8U YMCA team. No disrespect to the Mavs, but that is just how dominant Victor Wembanyama looks. That is just how out of their league every other team that plays Victor Wembanyama looks. I don't know. Not just how you stop this guy, I don't even know how you slow him down, Fitz.
Yeah, Caroline, the rare times in my life as a short man that I've been able to play with other adults on a 5-foot rim is the most powerful thing in the world. Like that's everybody at a party at some point has a 5-foot rim that their friend's kid has up, and all of a sudden we all dunk, we all feel like gods. That's how Wemby feels on a regular rim. I can't imagine that level of power. I love this. We'll see how many NBA. Of our. Yeah, I mean, exactly. Like he's on a regulation, he's still against everyone, just reaching over everybody like a big brother. He can hold you with one hand and just boop right over you on the other. That's the sort of NBA analysis you only get on Yahoo Sports Daily. We are only getting started. We got a big weekend to keep previewing, including a wild weekend. The World Series gets underway tonight. Russ Dorsey will join us next. We'll figure out what to look for in this series. Welcome back to hour number 2 of Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz, and it is World Series Day. It's a Friday. We got all sorts of action going on all over the place and across the NBA. We've got a big weekend in college football and the NFL, but most importantly, we got a chip series starting. And anytime you get one of those, it just hits different, especially this one, Caroline. Like, I'm going to be honest, like, as great as the Dodgers have looked and as much as Toronto will captivate an entire country, this series just feels like there's a different level of anticipation in the air. I know we're coming off of Dodgers-Yankees. Like, it doesn't get a lot better than the two biggest brands in the sport playing last year. But, man, this feels electric. It feels special. And there's a real opportunity for the Dodgers. To go back-to-back is something that we just see so rarely. It hasn't been done since the 90s that it's actually been accomplished, right? So you start talking about what that means for the Dodgers. There is so much on the line here for how we will remember this Dodgers team that I think that's part of what makes it special.
There are so many elements to this, of the Dodgers potentially going back-to-back, their payroll. I mean, if you look at the top of their lineup, whether it's Teoscar Hernandez to Freddie Freeman to Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, I mean, they have some of the best players in the sport and the best player that we have ever seen in this sport. So I'm excited to catch up with our friend Russ Dorsey, who joins the show right now. Russ Dorsey, welcome in. Appreciate you for joining us. We've got an absolute.
What's going on, guys?
Appreciate you for joining us because we have World Series baseball tonight. Blue Jays, Dodgers. We were just discussing, the historical context that this, series might have if the Dodgers do in fact win their second straight World Series. Would a sweep make the Dodgers the best team in the history of Major League Baseball in the eyes of many?
Here's the thing, guys. Yes, to answer your question, I think people look at this series and they see the name Los Angeles Dodgers and it just strikes fear into people. But I want everybody out there to know this is not David versus Goliath. Like, that narrative is out there, and that might be a more, we get in the postseason, you're getting more viewers, more eyes, and more casual fans than diehards who are watching for 7 months. The Toronto Blue Jays were arguably the best team in the American League most of this season. And so I don't want people out there to look at this just because they saw what the Dodgers did to the Milwaukee Brewers and say, okay, this is a team that is going to run right through the Toronto Blue Jays. No, they will not. Like, I don't think this is going to be the layup that some people expect it to be, because I look at a Blue Jays team that has tons of confidence. And yes, you could say, and I made a video about this the other day, like, the Dodgers have been in the World Series 5 times since 2017. This is the first time that the Blue Jays have been to the World Series since 1993, which is a year before I was born, right? So it's been a little while, but they're the type of team that has the type of confidence where they're like, we don't care who's in front of us. We don't care if it's the Dodgers or anybody else. Like, we expect to win the World Series. And so do I think it would put the Dodgers in a different light, this group specifically? Yes, if they happen to, make quick work of the Toronto Blue Jays. I just have a hard time believing that the Blue Jays would just lay down like that in 4 games.
So, Russ, hear me out, because everything you just said makes so much sense, but I can't get out of my mind what we saw from the starting pitching by the Dodgers in the NLCS. Like, when you go that long, like, I'm sorry, analytics people have been telling me for the last however many years that you don't run pitchers that long. And that's all they did. So it's hard for me to get that out of my mind. How do the Blue Jays attack that?
Look, I think what I saw from those 4 dudes in the NLCS, Blake Snell looks as good as I've ever seen him. Yoshinobu Yamamoto was incredible in Milwaukee. And then series goes back to LA. Tyler Glasnow had the shortest start of the 4 starters, and he still went 5 2/3, only allowed 1 run. And then Shohei doing Shohei things in the clincher. Like, you guys showed the graphic a couple of minutes ago of the 2005 White Sox. Now, I'm born and raised in Chicago. I remember what those guys did, having 4 consecutive complete games. Now, we'll never see that again, but it did give me memories of what that group did, and those guys were dominant. And I do see the same dominance out of this version of the Dodgers starting pitching. But to your question, Fitz, like, how do the Blue Jays attack this Dodgers rotation? I think they're going to work the count. They make a lot of hard contact, and different than the Milwaukee Brewers, they hit the ball in the air. And when you hit the ball in the air, the ball usually goes out of the ballpark. And when you have guys like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Addison Barger and Ernie Clement and George Springer and guys who can, put the barrel on the baseball, you have a good opportunity, but also the ability to draw walks, the ability to draw out at bats. And even if it doesn't end in a hit, guys having 6, 7, 8 pitch at bats, that's how you get these guys out of the game and get into that Dodgers bullpen, which is their weakness, by the way, in this World Series. Like, the best pitchers for the Dodgers are their starters. Like, once you get into that bullpen, and they're going to probably be without Alex Vesia, who is Dave Roberts' one of his most trusted relievers, you're going to have to really find ways to put it together if you're the Dodgers. So if you can get into that bullpen, if you're Toronto, that's probably your key to success.
There have been 4 other times in history where the 2 winners of the championship series, one went to 7 games and the other swept. All 4 times in history, the team that went to 7 games ended up winning the World Series. So when we hear the rest versus rust conversation, that the Dodgers are coming in with so much rest, that the Blue Jays went to 7 games in an incredibly emotional series with the Mariners, should we look at that and say that maybe the rest versus rust conversation is advantage rust?
Listen, guys, I want to say this. I am a huge sports fan outside of baseball, just like you guys are. I've always hated the rest versus rust argument because sometimes if I'm the team that gets the rest, you're like, oh, thank God, we finally got some time to breathe, get some guys healthy. And I think that's where the Dodgers have been for much of this season. Because when you think about their last 5 or 6 years, they've played a lot of baseball. Like, since Dave Roberts became the manager of the Dodgers, they've never missed the postseason. So they're playing deep into October every year. And with this group that they have, especially the starting pitching that we talked about, they didn't really have all of those guys healthy together as a group until like late August. And so for the fact that they could finally give those guys a little bit of a break here, I think you've seen how productive they've been. And yes, I do think the rest versus rust conversation is overblown, because at this time of year, you're looking for any way to get guys a little bit of rest, because in what will likely be a 6 or 7 game series, a lot of those relievers you're going to have to use every day. Your starters are going to have to go deeper than they've ever gone before, because there is no next round. Like, there is no tomorrow. And I think you saw in the ALCS with the Mariners against the Blue Jays, Dan Wilson, manager of the Seattle Mariners, not going to his closer, Andres Munoz, who was well rested. And it's like, hey, man, there's no tomorrow if you're out. So, like, you might as well go ahead and use your guys, use your best players to try to make it to the next round. So, yeah, I think the rest versus rust thing is a little overblown. And I think the Dodgers are very happy that they've gotten a little extra rest here before the World Series.
So, Russ, I have a buddy that for years played for the Blue Jays, and he always talked about how that particular crowd just hits different. Like, the entire experience hits different. Walk me through the impact adrenaline will have in front of that crowd for this particular game 1.
So when I did our Yahoo prediction with my buddy Jake Mintz yesterday, one of the things I wrote in my prediction was that for a team that doesn't have World Series experience, the huge benefit that the Blue Jays have is that they do have home field advantage. Rogers Center is one of those atmospheres where when it's packed out, they just did the renovation. They have like lights in the railings and everything. And I was watching a light show yesterday at the ballpark. Like, people are really excited about this team. And I think for people who don't necessarily pay attention to the Toronto Blue Jays or Toronto or Canadian sports, like, you have an entire country behind one team. And I think that is a significant advantage for the Blue Jays in this World Series. That man right there, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., a born and raised Canadian. Like, he was born in Montreal because his Hall of Fame father, Vlad Guerrero Sr., played for the Montreal Expos. And so, like, you have a native son of Canada playing for Canada's team in the World Series after he got his $500 million deal. Like, all the storylines are there for this to be a Cinderella season for the Toronto Blue Jays. But this crowd is going to be hungry and excited each and every game. You saw what they did in Game 7 of the ALCS. And so I think that is going to be a big reason. I think the first 2 games, the Dodgers and Blue Jays are going to split, and we're going to have to fly back here next Thursday for game 6 and 7. Like, I really believe this is going to be a classic heavyweight bout. You're going to have big swings from both sides getting shots in. But I do think that Rogers Center crowd is going to be a big momentum push for the Blue Jays in the series.
Russ, that is what I love to hear, because yes, it's the World Series, but World Series are way more fun when they go to 6 or 7. What would winning a championship do for Vlad Guerrero's legacy?
Oh, it's huge. It's huge because I think when you look at what he was touted as, you're talking, he's one of the few prospects ever to get an 80 grade hit tool. So for everybody out there, scouts grade on the 20-80 scale, right? 20 being the lowest, 80 being the highest. Scouts said this might be the best hitting prospect we have ever seen. And many people, you get the name Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And already people are saying, all right, you have to be amazing at baseball because your dad is amazing at baseball. And when your dad's a Hall of Famer, like we've seen it with Bronny, like the expectations, fair or unfair, are going to be there. And to be the superstar in your home country of Canada, where people knew your dad for so many years, and to get to a point where, a couple of years ago, he finished second in MVP voting at the age of 23. And if it wasn't for a guy named Shohei Ohtani, he would have been the runaway MVP at 23 years old. And that's how you get $500 million. And that's how you become the vocal and emotional leader of a Blue Jays team that is 4 wins away from winning their first World Series in 32 years. This would do a lot for his legacy. And I think we would put Vlad in a conversation with the other superstars in the game that we think of and say, yeah, this guy was one of the best players of his generation, even though he's only 27 years old. It's not like Vlad is some 36, 37-year-old on the back nine. It's like, finally got one before he retired. Like, no, this could be something that carries on here for a little while. And what would be year one of him signing that $500 million deal?
I mean, look, as the resident old man on this show, let me fight for the old guys here. Scherzer and Kershaw, obviously, they're at a much different spot in their career. Like,
yeah, so they're on that back nine that you were talking about.
So, but when you talk about I think this gets interesting because as you do get older and you realize, man, I may not have many of these experiences left. There's a fine line between appreciating the moment, getting tight in the moment. Like, how do those vets handle this series?
I think for Clayton specifically, hearing him talk at Media Day yesterday and, kind of what the last month plus has been since he announced that this was going to be his final season, I think you're seeing a guy that's allowing himself to take it all in. Like, you're talking about one of the best pitchers of his generation. And I'm always a guy that tells people, hey, appreciate greatness when you see it because you never know how long it will be before you see something like that again, if you ever see it again. And Clayton Kershaw is like, you look at all the things that you could do as a starting pitcher, no-hitter, World Series, Cy Young, won an MVP. When you're in the same conversation as Sandy Koufax, like, you've done something right. And so I think for Clayton Kershaw, I think this is just another thing that he could put on the mantle if the Dodgers are able to win this World Series and say, you know what, I might have not had the same impact on this World Series as I've had in World Series past, but this is a nice way to ride off into the sunset. And for Max Scherzer, he's going to have to pitch in the series. Like, it's not the same as it has been for Clayton, where it's like, okay, we have 4 horses in our rotation. They don't need me to go out there and throw 7 innings anymore. The Blue Jays are going to need Max Scherzer to pitch some innings in this series. So I think for Max, I think it's less sentimental, in a way of like, oh, I'm glad I get to do this one more time. I think for Max, it's like, no, I got to throw up some zeros on the board. But I also think if you caught Max after this series was over, he would probably say, man, it's probably cool to get one more of these because you never know when you're pitching in your 40s if it's going to be the end or not.
All right, Russ, I'm going to ask you to do something that we never like to do, but we always have to do. Your official prediction. Who wins, how many games, and who is the World Series MVP?
See, this is the thing, guys. People yell at me when I do these things, and I hate when people yell at me because baseball, you never know. But I'm going to say the Toronto Blue Jays win their first World Series title in 32 years over the Dodgers in 7 games, because I think nobody's going to be able to stop the train that is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I think sometimes guys just have it cooking, and I think Vladdy has it cooking right now, and I think that's going to spread throughout that Blue Jays lineup. But I also think that the Blue Jays are just a different animal offensively than the Dodgers have seen in about 2 weeks since they played the Phillies. Like, they didn't really have to do too much against the Milwaukee Brewers. Like, their offense is scoring a little bit over 4.5 runs a game, which is significantly down from what they did last year this time in the postseason, where they're scoring over 5 runs a game. The Blue Jays guys are scoring over 6.5 runs a game, and Vladdy is the engine of that. And so you have a team that can put runs on the board, can hit the ball out of the ballpark, have patient at bats, put the ball in play, and can hit with power. That's probably the right recipe against this specific Dodgers rotation. Now, I'm not saying that you're not going to have a game from, I think Blake Snell is going to continue to do what Blake Snell has done tonight. But that doesn't mean they're not going to get to Yoshinobu Yamamoto in game 2, or Tyler Glasnow in game 3, or Shohei in game 4. Or you don't make those guys work early in the game and get into that bullpen, and that's where you start to do some of your damage. So I see this series going 7 games, and it could be 7 games and the Dodgers end up winning. But my gut tells me I like what I've seen out of the Blue Jays. And it's not, I want people to when I say this, I don't want you to think I just don't believe in the Los Angeles Dodgers. Like, you put the record up there while the entire time I was talking. So they're obviously doing something right. I just think this is going to be a really good matchup. And that's, as you mentioned, Caroline, that's what makes these things fun. When you have a matchup where it's like, wow, a back and forth, the tennis match of you took a swing and then you took 2 games at home and then we took 2 games at home. And then now we have to go back to your place to finish the series. That's what makes a series really fun. That's what made the ALCS fun, because 7 games, the crowd gets involved. People are waiting with bated breath on every pitch. And so I think we're going to have that in this series. And there's just tons of star power. You turn your head, it's Shohei, Mookie Betts, Vladdy, George Springer, Freddie Freeman. The list goes on of MVPs, Cy Young Award winners, managers of the year. So this should be an exciting series. Blue Jays in 7.
You guys can read all this work across Yahoo Sports. Follow him on Twitter, X, at Russ_Dorsey1. I cannot wait. A game 7 in Toronto would be absolutely magical. Thanks for the time, man. We appreciate it.
Get your tickets, guys. Get your tickets. Head up here.
I'll text you. You just go ahead. I'll be a +1. Let's go, Russ. Come on.
Got my passport ready.
I'll make some calls.
Well, as soon as we get to the break, I'm texting Russ.
Some baseball.
There we go. Appreciate you, Russ. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Coming up, usually it's Thursdays, but, it's a glorious Friday for thirst traps. You don't want to miss it. We'll tell you games you should keep your eyes on that could be trap games this weekend. It's a trap. Usually this is for Thursdays, but yesterday, in case you didn't catch it, was a particularly wild day. Caroline, Fenton, Jason Fitz. We're doing thirst traps on Friday today, which is a little bit of a change. Caroline, did you spend the time as assigned over the last week and finally watch Star Wars to even understand this reference?
Yeah. I get it now. Oh, wow. I loved it. I had so much fun watching all of the movies about the wars in the stars.
That's you. So look, in this situation, I'm the NBA. She's Terry Rozier. I think we know that that's all a lot. Okay, let's get to our thirst trap games. This is what we do. We like to pick a couple of games that we think are absolutely out there that could be trap games, and then most importantly, we give you a Photoshop for the ages that describes it all. So we got some trap games. Caroline, what is first on your mind as a trap game? Sell me on it.
I think Mississippi State's going to beat Texas this weekend. I really do. And I know that Texas is a ranked team. I don't know why they're a ranked team. Arch Manning has a fever.
That's
and
Arch Manning
only
in the cowbells.
Is more cowbell. I need to see crop tops on the sidelines with clanging the cowbells. That's another reason why I think dum, dum, dum. That's another reason why I think Texas is going to lose. Look, Mississippi State is an underratedly difficult place to play. The cowbells are insufferable. Even when I watch a game on TV, I have to turn the volume down because the cowbells are so annoying through my TV speakers. If you've never experienced that environment before, you don't really know what to expect. And this is Texas's first trip to Starkville since joining the SEC. We saw how difficult of a trip that was for Texas going into the swamp. Another tough place to play. Another thirst trap that I called. Thank you very much. Cha-ching, cha-ching. Texas is not a very good football team. Thank you. Texas beat Oklahoma a few weeks ago, and I think that Texas is ranked, being ranked is now, I think, a testament to that, or, Texas is ranked because of that. I think that game was a fluke far more than that was actually what Texas and Oklahoma are. I think I chalked that up to having a bad day in a rivalry game, and rivalry games are sometimes weird, and John Mateer was overcoming hand surgery. Texas has the 80th ranked offense in college football. Texas's defense is okay. It's good. It's average. I think it's a far better unit than their offense is. But they beat Kentucky, a bad Kentucky team, by 3. They lost to Florida. I mean, I don't think that there's any part of this Texas team that I can say, man, that is absolutely positively a reason why they should beat this Mississippi State team. A Mississippi State team that, look, their record I don't think is as indicative of how good of a team they are, because they've been knocking on the door of taking down an SEC opponent over the last few weeks. They were that far away from taking down Florida. They took Tennessee to overtime. It was a 7-3 game in the first half against Texas A&M. Now, Texas A&M ran away with that game in the end, but I think Texas A&M is a college football playoff contender. They're a national championship contender. Texas A&M is a far better team than I think Texas is. So I think Mississippi State playing at home, Mississippi State knocking on the door of taking down, the Goliath of the SEC. I think that Mississippi State gets a win against Texas this weekend.
This is the classic clash of overrated versus underrated. I agree with you. I think Mississippi State currently 100%. Is underrated and Texas is overrated. Can we get the picture one more time? I just want to see, Caroline, you're good with voices. Can you do a Christopher Walken? Can we get I got a fever and the only I
got a fever and the only prescription is more cowbell.
Oh, that's so perfectly
done.
This
weekend. The cowbell's gonna solve or fix my fever.
Is it? Okay. Yeah. I thought maybe you were telling me you were going to dress up as Christopher Walken for Halloween. All right. I will get. Okay. I'll give you my thirst trap here, and I'll tell you the game, and then we'll see the picture. We'll see how they do this week. This game has tremendous importance to this staff. As I should give a shout out right now to. We have Josh, that's a Bills fan. We have Doug, that's a Panthers fan, and I am taking the Panthers over the Bills as my thirst trap. Let's see the picture. Oh, look at that, Josh.
Oh, there's Josh.
I like this.
Both Joshes. Josh Allen and our producer, Josh.
How did Doug not make it in the picture? That's the question. Is what do we got? Josh is eating a wing there. It's I can't tell if that's an anchor bar wing. I don't know. I don't know. But this is a beautiful thing. I love everything about
anchor
this
bar.
Photoshop.
Not the best wings in Buffalo.
I would agree
Bill.
with that.
Yeah.
Actually, shout out. I went to the Anchor Bar once when I was on the road, and it was my birthday, and I was like, I want wings. So we all went, the whole organization went to the Anchor Bar, and then ironically, everybody else in the band forgot their wallet. So I ended up buying wings for the entire tour. Oh, I'm not sad about it still. My cheap ass is not happy. This game, though, look, it's all about Enrico.
I love Rico Dowdle looming, by the way.
I mean, Rico's looming in this game because this Bills defense can get got. We know that so far. And, Sean McDermott, you better get this right because this is why you're the head coach. This is your calling card. I love Josh Allen so much, and I want Josh Allen to go out and just have a kick-ass year. But I don't trust Sean McDermott's defense at all. And Rico is hot right now. Like, he's running the ball on everybody. I know it's easy to say, revenge game against the trash Cowboys defense. I'm not sure the Bills' run defense is much better than the Cowboys' run defense. So Rico has been really the delight. And I know this is where you tell me Andy Dalton's playing. How could you possibly pick that? Makes it even more of a trap game because nobody's losing sleep to the Red Rocket, but you are losing the game. Sorry, Josh. So I like this. What do you think, Caroline?
I love this. I'm with you 110%. I'm sorry, our producer, Josh, but I'm riding with the Panthers this weekend because the Buffalo Bills have the 31st ranked defense in the run defense in the NFL. They're giving up 157 yards per game on the ground. I think it is almost a guarantee, and you can clip this and save this for Monday morning so I look like a genius. I think it is a guarantee that Rico Dowdle gets a $150 at least on this Bills run defense.
That's the one player prop that I aggressively played this weekend was Rico Dowdle on the over on the rushing numbers for that exact reason. And look, how do you beat Josh Allen and the Bills? I got it. I think it was 135 is where I got it. I bet it up.
Easy money.
Yeah.
Wings on Fitz on Monday.
Yeah, well, especially if the Cowboys win. I'm telling you, I could be having a Monday. But all of this to say, I think the thirst trap, Andy Dalton is a part of it, right? Like, I think if you're looking at it from the Bills standpoint, it's just so easy to overlook this Carolina Panthers team, which has to get some credit. Josh gave us a boo for it, but shouldn't Doug give us a cheer for it? Like, Doug's working on the show, too. We should get a cheer from Doug, not just the boos from Josh. It feels like maybe Josh has control. Yeah, there we go.
Thank you, Doug.
Those are our thirst trap games for the week. We'll see. If you're new to the show, go back and look on YouTube. Our record speaks for itself. We're making you some money on these thirst trap games. So congratulations. You're welcome in advance. You can buy all the wings on us. All right, coming up next, speaking of betting action, we're going to get some thoughts from our guy Ben Fawkes on everything we're looking at over the course of the weekend, some betting information that can help you, plus even more understanding on what's happening in the NBA. We'll do that next. It's important to make a distinction between charges against Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier. Rozier case relates to inside information for sports betting and NBA prop bets. Billups' case relates to attracting people to play in rigged poker games. Now, they were both put together yesterday for the press conference that we covered live on Yahoo Sports Daily, but this context matters a lot. And to help us break that down, plus everything that we're going to get to over the course of the weekend, Ben Fawkes joins us now, senior betting analyst at Yahoo Sports on Yahoo Sports Daily. Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz. Ben, talk to us a little bit, like, as someone that's so in the thick of it, what was your initial reaction to yesterday?
Yeah, I think I have a law degree after yesterday. Just
we all
for
do.
that. Yeah, just for reading through indictments. But this was kind of a story that, and will continue to evolve, but just kept evolving from the start of the day. I think initially, right, we see the tweets and we see Chauncey Billups and gambling, and you think, oh man, this is an active NBA coach who just coached. There's some sort of point shaving scandal here. Then we hear the FBI comes out, and there's basically two separate indictments or two separate cases. One in which Chauncey Billups and Damon Jones have been named essentially as, I guess, celebrity attractors to rigged illegal poker games, right? And so that basically means that through the Mafia, they had Chauncey Billups and Damon Jones bring over people who they called whales or rich people to play in these poker games, essentially because they're a celebrity influencer, right? Hey, you get to play poker with Chauncey Billups. That's why they come to the games. Little do the people know that there's an intricate system that those card games are using, and basically they can't win, right? So they're using all this high-tech information. They can see the cards when they're face down and all this stuff. So through 2019, up until now, basically through those games, the people who were went and played in them, the whales, as we said, lost about $7 million. So that's kind of one case. The other case in which Terry Rozier has been named is essentially giving proprietary, what they call non-public information. That's usually about injuries or lineups or who's playing or who isn't playing to a specific number of people, in this case, some of his childhood friends and some of the co-conspirators, basically so that they can place a bet. In this case, it was for Terry Rozier's unders, right? And so if this sounds familiar, this is also related to the Jonte Porter case. This is also overlapping with that same type of thing where a NBA player basically told certain people, hey, you know, my over-under is 5.5 points, 3.5 rebounds, etc. I'm going to take myself out of the game after a certain period of time. So bet the unders because that's essentially a wager that we can control. And so that's the way kind of the Terry Rozier went. As you're seeing the tweet up on screen, one of these co-conspirators basically placed an $800 bet on some of these unders at an online sports book. He won $1,500, or he or she, I should say, and then allegedly placed a series of other bets, not, I don't think, with any inside information, and proceeded to then lose $4,000 over the course of the next day. So there is a whole lot from spending far too long reading through these indictments yesterday. There's just, so many layers. And I had said before that it's a little bit like an onion, like they say in Seinfeld. Like the more you peel it, the more it stinks. There's a lot here. And I don't think we have reached kind of the end of all of these revelations from this case.
I don't even think we're close to the end, Ben, just based off of what we learned in just the last 24 hours. But a big part of it is prop bets of individual players rigging games and rigging their own over-unders. So do you think that sports books, the NBA, or any other professional leagues will change prop bets moving forward, whether it's offering them period or offering them to specific players?
I think it's hard to believe there will be absolutely no change in what prop bets are offered, how they are offered, the odds on them, all of that, and the amount of players in which prop bets are offered on. That would seem kind of silly based off of everything that's come out. I think a lot of these cases have probably questioned, right, how many prop bets you necessarily need in a game, right? There's a difference, let's say, in an NFL game between offering, Justin Herbert over under 254.5 passing yards versus the third string tight end, over under half a catch, let's say. And so I think there is potentially a limit to the number of players, right? Maybe in the NBA, you offer prop bets on the top, let's say 6 or 7 players by minutes played, or points per game, or however it's determined. I think that's one way. There is another way. Potentially you offer what they call one-way markets, which would probably be just betting on the over, right? It's a lot more difficult to manipulate that if you have, let's say, Jonte Porter's over was 5.5 points. Usually he takes 3 shots, and all of a sudden the first quarter he's taken 8, 9 shots, clearly trying to get over some sort of point total. That's another thing that stands out. So I think there'll be heavier regulation on some of these. Prop bets aren't going to go away. There's just way too much money for these sports books, and they're also the basis of their highest margin product, which is same game parlays, right? That is the vast majority of the handle in the NBA. That is how people like to wager on the NBA, and especially the next generation, they like to bet on players, not necessarily teams. So you're putting together a same game parlay of all these different players, over under rebounds, points, assists, all these things. That's how people like to wager on the games. They're not necessarily putting together a 7-team parlay of I'm taking the Hornets and the T-Wolves and the Bulls to win in the same way they might do that in the NFL. So it's a little of a different kind of way that people like to wager on the NBA. And that's just such a high margin product for the sports books. I do think that they'll cede somewhat in terms of like I said, the number of markets or the way that they offer it, but it's hard to envision a world where there aren't any prop bets on the NBA.
I just want to quickly say, just like the FBI doesn't owe the NBA anything, the NBA also, to be very clear, can't just go to sports books and say you're no longer allowed to offer. Like, you're talking about massive
Correct.
Government regulations. The United States government would have to step in and change these. I want to make sure everybody's clear on that. Adam Silver can't just go to the sports books and say, hey, don't do this anymore. Let me ask you this, though. There are guardrails in place, and something that, Wendy has pointed out several times on ESPN, that the guardrails found the discrepancies the day of the Terry Rozier incident. So kind of explain to everybody what's in place, how it works, even interstate, so that they are catching people doing what they're doing.
Yeah, so basically through legalization after 2018, a bunch of integrity monitors were set up, and they get or can basically have access to the action at sports books, right? So they're generally going to know how much money is wagered on just about everything. They're going to know for, let's say, a Jonte Porter points prop, usually it's, I'll make up the number, $10,000 nationwide, right? That's how much is going to be wagered on his over-under for points. If all of a sudden on that day at a sports book, all of a sudden there's $100,000 worth of wagers, by the way, all on the under, that's going to set off a bunch of red flags. The sports books are going to report that. The integrity company is going to report that to the league. And usually those bets are then voided. That's how the Jonte Porter bet essentially was voided. Now, there is some controversy because the bet, I believe, did go through and was going to cash. And then all of a sudden the sportsbook said, wait a second, why are we paying out $1 million? So, but basically, to make a long story short, yes, this is how these things are caught. There's red flags that go up for any of these types of wagers in those specific amounts and the volume in which they're coming in on such small markets, right? This isn't an NFL game on Sunday morning where there's a ton of liquidity. These are very small market prop bets for individual players. And so that's another thing. These are always going to set off red flags. And if the system is working, in this case it is, that's how sportsbooks are going to catch it. And that's one of the benefits of legalization and having that information accessible versus if everyone was betting this through their neighborhood bookie or offshore, there's a far more probability that this wouldn't be caught.
I mean, just an astonishing story coming out. And I'm sure that we'll learn over the next few days and weeks and months just how deep this goes. But let's transition into baseball because we've got the World Series starting tonight, Ben. I think the Dodgers are the hot and the sexy pick, coming off of a sweep in the NLCS. But what are some of the trends that the bettors are showing? Is it really that the Dodgers are the hot and sexy pick, or maybe the Blue Jays getting some dollars on the sports books?
Yeah, it's tough. Look, I think ultimately it's tough to bet against the Dodgers, but we are seeing at BetMGM the majority of bets on the series. The Dodgers a minus 220 favorite, and the Blue Jays plus 180. We are seeing a majority of bets on the Blue Jays, but the majority of the money on the Dodgers. So probably some of the bigger wagers on the Dodgers. I think it's interesting comparing these two teams. The Dodgers, kind of a behemoth, right? They had a win total of 103 and a half. They obviously fell well short. 93 and 69, still won the NL West for the 12th time in the last 13 seasons. That's if you want a sure thing bet, that's generally betting the Dodgers to win the NL West is a good one. And they were plus 240 favorites starting the season to win the World Series. So their price hasn't shortened as much. Obviously, they've finally made it. The Blue Jays, conversely, they well exceeded expectations. They had a win total of 78 and a half. They were 66 to 1 to win the World Series entering the season. And so obviously if you're sitting on any Blue Jays tickets, you're in very good shape. But the Dodgers are a prohibitive favorite, as you would expect. Is the second biggest World Series favorite in the last 20 years, behind the Astros minus 235 in 2019 over the Nationals, and the Nationals won that series in 7, and the 2007 Red Sox, who swept the Rockies as a minus 240 favorite. So I think understandably the Dodgers a big favorite with that pitching, obviously bullpen questions as well. But I think we will see some betting on the Blue Jays because of the underdog status and because of that offense and what we just saw as well. But it's going to be tough. It's tough sledding to beat the Dodgers for sure. The Blue Jays need to do some work tonight at home in Game 1.
Let's get your thoughts, Ben, on one of the big NFL matchups everybody's talking about. Obviously, Ravens-Bears. This one's interesting because we have the 1-5 Ravens now a 6.5-point favorite against the 4-2 Chicago Bears. What does that tell you about the way Vegas is perceiving Lamar right now?
Yeah, so they're assuming Lamar Jackson is playing, right? We kind of saw this a bit with the betting market kind of versus reporting a couple weeks ago in that Texans game where the line opened around Ravens 9.5. At previous books, it was 10. I think reopened around 6.5. And then early in the week, all of a sudden the line shifted all the way. And the Texans ended up being about a 2.5 point favorite. So the Ravens were actually an underdog in the game. Right now, this line is pretty much stuck around Ravens -6, Ravens -6.5 against the Bears. So even though Lamar Jackson has been limited, it's kind of assumed off of that bye week. They're kind of just taking it easy with him in practice. And the sports books are assuming that he will play. As to why this line is 6.5, which I think a lot of people are surprised about because the Ravens are 1-5. Straight up, also 1-5 against the spread, the worst team in the NFL against the number. I think it's because the Ravens haven't really had their full team for, you could argue, most of the season. And so odds makers before the season had the Ravens as a top 5 power rated team. And so if everyone is healthy, they're still treating them that way, kind of using some of those preseason priors as well as what they've seen this season, but recognizing, hey, a lot of the offense has been injured. Lamar Jackson's been out. A lot of the defense has been injured as well. This is kind of the most whole that they've been, as you guys just showed the injury report, getting Roquan Smith potentially back, Ronnie Staley, Patrick Ricard, a bunch of pieces, both on offense and on defense. And generally, when teams are favored in this situation, since 2003, teams that have won 20% or fewer of their games and are at least a 3-point favorite, that fits the situation with the Ravens, are 30, 14, and 2 against the spread. So generally, they're favored for a reason, and generally, they cover that spread. The Ravens also coming off a bye, so getting that advantage. Lamar Jackson back. You could make an argument, obviously rested from injury, and this really is this is kind of their season, right? They need this game, and they are right there in the AFC North too. They're plus 140 to win the AFC North. The Steelers plus 125. So that division is far from decided. But this is a kitchen sink game. The Ravens need this one certainly to kind of get back on track and turn their season around.
Follow him on Twitter, X, whatever we want to call it now, at BFawkes22. Read him on yahoosports.com/betting. Ben, always appreciate your time, brother. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Ben.
You do.
From the weekend of the World Series to our weekend of picks, we're going to go across the board, give you the picks you must have on some of the biggest games next. Welcome back to Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I am Jason Fitz. We are hanging out with you on this Friday edition of the show. And look, that joy down in our heart is because we have a big weekend of football action ahead of us in addition to everything else we've been talking about over the course of the show. Caroline, it's Friday. That means it's time to make some picks. We're going to go through and we are going to do our pick six now. And I will mention we're still tied. Like we both have the same record at this point. We try and pick 3 college, 3 pro games every week. We try and find games that we disagree on, yet somehow we are sitting here at 20-16 each. So I will give you the floor first, my friend, on the first game.
Pretty impressive.
Missouri, I will say, hey, we're doing okay. We're doing okay. Neither of us are separating at this point. I think the show's starting to take action behind the scenes on which one of us is going to win this year. Missouri, Vandy, who you got?
The fix is in. I'm taking Vandy. I mean, Vandy is a really good football team. This isn't just a good story, as great of a story as it is. They're a really good team. They are so tough. They are so physical. They are so sound at the lines of scrimmage. Diego Pavia is so difficult to slow down that I think Vanderbilt, if they don't, turn the ball over in the red zone twice against Alabama, we're probably talking about an undefeated Vanderbilt team that took down Alabama at Bryant-Denny Stadium. And look, Missouri is also a very good team. I think that Missouri has one of the best, if not the best, running backs in the country in Ahmad Hardy. So that Vanderbilt defensive front is going to have their hands full with Ahmad Hardy and Bo Prabula and with what he can do with his legs. But overall, this Vanderbilt team is humming. It took overtime for Missouri to beat Auburn. I know it was in Auburn, but Auburn is not a very good football team. So I think Vandy wins this one. And I think that Vandy might lock up their spot in the college football playoff with a win over Missouri this weekend.
Look, after this game, I'm also picking Vanderbilt in this game. And by the way, after this game, they'll be at Texas. I don't think Texas is any good. I think Texas is going to lose this weekend. I think Vandy will be favored. They then have Auburn. They'll be favored. UK, they'll be favored. The only game left on the season that they might not be favored, and I say might, is at Tennessee. I think Vandy's
and they don't need to win that
season.
Game.
No,
if they win out until that game against Tennessee, they don't have to beat Tennessee. A 10-2 Vanderbilt team gets in.
I'm not sure we should just be talking about Vandy in the college football playoff. We might need to start talking about Vandy in the SEC championship game, and that just feels weird. But the way it lays out,
yeah.
I mean, Vandy has a shot at a one-loss season. I think they're only going to be an underdog one time this season for the rest of the year. So I'm with you on this.
So
it's
good.
Weird. But in Diego Pavia, we trust. What about Bears at Ravens? We'll do that one next. What do you got in that?
I'm going to take the Bears. There's too many question marks about Lamar Jackson. And look, the Ravens are banged up defensively, and that's hurting them. But the defense was bad before they were banged up defensively. So I think this Bears team and Caleb Williams, they're putting the pieces together week over week over week. It feels like they just continue to get better. So I think that Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson are able to take advantage of a leaky Ravens defense. The Bears win it in Baltimore, and Baltimore fans just continue to become even more and more nervous about what the season may have in store for them.
Not so fast, my friend. This is the week. All right, I'll go back to my 80s wrestling analogies. We all grew up watching Hulk Hogan in a sleeper hold, and Hulk Hogan falls to the ground, and the ref takes his arm, and he throws it, and it goes down 1, and you think he's dead. That was the beginning of the season with the injuries for the Ravens. The arms goes back up in the air, boom, hits the ground again, and that's what we've seen so far. And now this is it. The arm goes up. If it hits the mat one more time, Hulk's going to lose. And just before it hits the mat, nope, starts rising up. Crowd gets fired up. Everybody knows what's happening. That's what's going to happen this week. We are going to get a thunder of the gods performance by the Ravens. Baltimore is about to win, and Baltimore is about to remind us all that as crazy as it sounds, they are still in this wild NFL season. I can't believe it, but I do believe that the Ravens get the win, and for a week at least, Baltimore fans can breathe a huge sigh of relief. Let's go back to the college game here, and Ole Miss backs up against the wall, take it on Oklahoma. What do you got here?
I'm going to take the Sooners. Taking the Sooners at home. Look, I think that loss against Texas and Red River was so fluky. John Mateer looks so much better now than he did a couple of weeks ago. I mean, Oklahoma is coming off of an absolute slaughtering against South Carolina 26-7 last week. And I don't trust Ole Miss's defense at all. I don't trust their run defense. I don't trust their secondary. I don't trust their ability to get after the quarterback. I think if you give John Mateer that much time, and if you allow this deep core of Oklahoma running backs to, see green grass ahead of them, they're going going to take it. I think that this does have the possibility to be a very close football game. I think the spread is like 5.5. I don't think the difference between these two teams is that big and that wide, but I do think Oklahoma is able to defend home turf against a bad Ole Miss defense.
The over-under on this one's 53.5. I'm not sure one team won't hit that. Like, to me, this is going to be absolutely like, you could have 600 yards of offense from each side. I don't think either defense can stop either offense, but I do think that this is what I'm going to gently call my Sam Pittman game. Every year we fall in love with Arkansas, and we realize Pittman no longer the head coach there. But for years, you fell in love with Arkansas, and about halfway through the year, you're like, why'd I do that again? Why? That's where I am with Ole Miss. All right, Lane? Like, if you lose this game, then I'm out on ever buying in on Ole Miss again to win until you actually win an Natty. If you lose this game, 2 in a row in the SEC, then I am out completely on your program here moving forward to ever be actually relevant at the highest possible level. Shame on you if you lose it. I think if we get in a shootout and Lane Kiffin can't find a way to beat Brent Venables, then we got some Lane Kiffin questions we need answered. So I'm all in. Ole Miss wins a shootout. I'm talking like 50-48. Like, it's one of those gross games with no defense. What about?
It's going to be one of those. That 2023 was it? Or 2023 Ole Miss LSU when the score was like 51-49. It was ridiculous. That's what this game's going to be like.
I don't disagree with that. Cowboys at Broncos. What do you got?
Give me the Broncos. I mean, look, if we're talking about offensive shootouts, I mean, the Cowboys win in an offensive shootout 7 days a week and twice on Sundays. But I think that Bo Nix and this Broncos offense found a little bit of electricity in the fourth quarter against the Giants last week. I think defense wins championships, and defense will win out here. An okay offense with a great defense versus an elite offense with a trash defense. Give me the defense all day long. I will take the Broncos to win at home. Plus, Mile High Stadium, tough place to play.
Defense wins championships, yes. Offense wins on Sunday, and that's why I've gone full Portnoy on this. If you watch Portnoy on Saturday on Big Noon, he emptied his entire bank account on Vanderbilt. Well, Portnoy made a lot more money than I did on Saturday. But I'll say this. My bank account, not nearly as deep as Portnoy's is, but I literally have gone in and put every dollar left in my betting account on the Cowboys to win this game outright. I have put every cent on Dallas. That's how comfortable I am with the Cowboys getting not the points, outright win. All right, plus 154 when I got it. So I am putting it all in and letting it all ride on this Cowboys offense. I think what the Broncos did was more about a fluke meltdown by the Giants than it was about the Broncos. I think Bo Nix has taken a step back, and I'm not sure that the Broncos will be capable of taking full advantage the way they should. Javonte Williams will be able to run, Javonte Williams will be able to run on the Broncos in this game also, which is a big difference in it. So I think the Cowboys offense gets them the points they need. Texas A&M at LSU. What do you got?
Look, I get it. I went to LSU, but I'm not a homer. I can be, but I won't be right now. But I am saying that LSU is going to win this football game. Because this rivalry is inexplicable. Also, going back to 2017, the home team has won every single matchup, and sometimes inexplicably so. In 2021, LSU had already fired Ed Orgeron. LSU was terrible. Texas A&M could have had a shot at the college football playoff, but LSU spoiled that with a win at home. And then in 2022, LSU had a clear path to go to the college football playoff. If they beat Texas A&M and then beat Georgia in the SEC championship game, LSU would have gone to the college football playoff. But no, it was a 4-win Texas A&M team that took down Jaden Daniels and that LSU team at home. So it doesn't matter what the records are throughout everything that you know about these teams when they play. The home team has won, going back to when I was at LSU. So it's been a minute. There is no reason on paper why LSU should win this game. Quarterback advantage, A&M. Defense advantage, A&M. Coaching advantage, A&M. Offense advantage, A&M. But LSU's playing at home at night, so I'm taking LSU.
All I have to say is Coach O. Give me a Coach O here. Give me a Coach O. There we go. I think LSU unlocked that offense.
I'm so glad I'm not alone.
Look at that. Look at that. I'm with you on that LSU island. Packers Steelers Aaron Rodgers revenge game. I got Green Bay in this one. What do you got?
I got Green Bay as well. Look, the wrath of Aaron Rodgers can be incredibly strong, but I'm taking the Packers.
Yeah, look, Aaron Rodgers, the Steelers story has been great. It's been fun. But if my math's the correct way, I've got the Steelers losing this weekend and the Ravens winning this weekend, which will lead to the absolute chaotic conversation Monday morning of who the best team in the North is going to be. I'm here for it. Everybody's going to tell me constantly that this is a big revenge game for Aaron Rodgers. I believe that. I think that's true. But at the end of the day, you can have revenge. But if you don't have the horses, you can't win.
Yeah, I was going to say, Aaron Rodgers said, oh, this is just another game. Oh, this doesn't mean anything extra. Bull crap, Aaron. We know that this game means just a little bit something extra for Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, well, we'll go spend a couple of days in the darkness to make sure that we recenter ourselves. But Monday morning, we'll be right here at 9 a.m. for Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. On behalf of everybody that works behind the scenes, thanks for watching. Have a great weekend. Come back, see us Monday.